Hello, thanks for joining me today. I'm Jan Clothier of Thinking Stamping and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator based in New Zealand. And for those of you who follow me regularly, I'm sorry that there wasn't a video last week. We had an unexpected illness and death, I'm afraid, in our family, and it just threw everything out for everyone. But I'm back this week and I hope you're going to enjoy it. If you see anything that I use today in today's video and you would like to purchase it from me, you're more than welcome to do so if you live in New Zealand. There's a link to my online store in the video description below, or you can give me a message. Anyway, today's video, I'm going to apologise in advance. It's going to be a little bit long and a little bit wordy because actually the card we're making today is a little bit complex, but if you just take it a step at a time, of course, it's like everything quite straightforward. So the card we're going to make today uses the On the Ocean bundle, so the pirate ship and the matching dies. And the thing that's really nice about it is that it's got this little interactive turn wheel here so that you can personalise your card and give someone a lot of pleasure just twisting the wheel and changing what it looks like. The one that we're going to make is going to have a couple of variations, but I think you'll enjoy it and you'll be able to see how easy it is to customise it for your own self. So today, the video today is going to be in a couple of parts really. The first thing I want to talk about is how you create the base, so the mechanism of the turn, and then the second part about how I've chosen to decorate it using this particular set. So as I've said, we're using the On the Ocean bundle, which is the whole sort of decorative element of it. But the basis of the mechanism is this die set, the Give It a Whirl dies. And it's quite an interesting set. It's got lots of extra bits. So the key bit is this, which cuts the bit of the front. The various apertures, you see I've used this sort of I don't know what you'd call it, quadrant of a circle, sector of a circle one, which is that. But you can choose different shape apertures. So you can have a rectangle, you can have heart-shaped one, you can have a circular one. And there are also a whole lot of other little pieces in the set. So there's these little stars and clouds and hearts, little arrows so you can show people where to turn the wheel, and a nice little label for sentiments. But the things that are absolutely critical to any card like this that you make are the frame, the wheel, and whichever aperture you're going to use. So in this instance, I wanted the biggest shape so that I could fit in. The one I really wanted to fit in was this flock of birds. So I needed a shape large enough to take it. So I've chosen that sector shape. So what you need to do is decide where you're going to put the aperture, because I've chosen to do it there because I wanted room for the ship, but I wanted room for the birds. But I could have done it over there. You could do it down here. So you can, with this set, you can choose where you put the opening. I've chosen to put it up here. And then you need to also cut yourself the wheel. So that's kind of like the mechanics of it, and then you can decorate it up however you like. So for this card, it does use quite a lot of stuff, or just because the die set, the ship and the skull and the crossbones and everything just gives you so much room to try out other things. So I will attempt to go through what you need to make this card, and hopefully I don't leave anything out. So I've used Starry Sky as my base. As always, it's the width of an A4 piece of paper scored at 10.5 because that's the standard size in New Zealand. Unlike normal, where I normally cut 14.8, in this instance, I have cut 14.3, and that's to do with the size that this cuts. You see, I wanted it to fit nicely on the shape, so I had to cut it a bit shorter, 14.3 width of paper, 14.3. I have cut myself also a piece of Tahitian tide, which is 10 centimetres by 13.8, because that's going to mat onto that. And I've also done the same size for the inside. So that's the same size piece for the inside, and a piece of white that's cut 1/2 centimetre smaller. So that would be 9.5 by 13.3. But that's for the inside, so we'll just pop that aside for now. You need a piece of white, which is large enough for that. And when you cut it, you can cut the aperture at the same place. It's got a nice little nog there so that you can link them together, fit them together. So they'll cut nicely together. And you just set it to where you want. And I was aiming for as far over as I could get so that I'd have room for the ship to go down that side. And you need a piece of white that is large enough for the wheel piece. Okay, and so they cut out, and you end up with these, the piece with the aperture and the wheel to go in behind to turn around. Then it gets slightly more complicated. You need, to make the wheel turn more easily, I created myself these little paper washers. Basically they're washers made out of cardboard. You can do them however you like. What I did was I just took a piece of paper, a piece of white scrap. I used my little punch, which is retired now, but I'm sure lots of people have got them in their craft rooms. Punch a hole, get yourself a little circle punch, and then just click it out. And you've got a nice little paper washer that you can use, and I'll show you why you need those later, but it's to do with making it easier to turn the wheel around. So I used a minimum of 3. I don't know whether there's an upper number, perhaps more is good. I guess we'll find out as we go along. Right, now that's all you need kind of for the mechanism of the card. Everything else is, and the base, everything else is related to the decoration that we've got going on here. So you need a piece of early espresso, or whatever colour you're going to use for the ship and the spars, rigging, whatever it's called. So you need a piece of early espresso that's large enough to take the die for the ship and for the rigging. Okay, so you need a piece big enough for that. And what you get cut out from that is those bits. And you need a piece of Starry Sky for the sails, to make the sails and the little flag. So that's the sail piece and a little flag piece. They'll cut out of that. And you end up with that and that. And then you're also going to need some Starry Sky and some Tahitian Tide to make this 3D little wavy bit. And what I did was I cut a piece of Starry Sky that was the width of the card, which width of the, the piece that you've cut out here. You use this die to cut, and that gives you your nice edge here. Whoops. Which way around does it go? That way. And then it's a separate die. This die here cuts you out the nice detaily bits, and then you just line it up, trim it to the size, and you've got a nice piece of ocean to add on to there when you get up to it, when you get up to the adding on bit. You also need a little bit of white if you're going to do the sentiment. Like, it's not compulsory to put a happy birthday there, or you could even put it up there instead of the skull and crossbones. But what I did was I took the little happy birthday, stamped it in Starry Sky onto this piece of white, and then for this one, which I didn't do for my original sample, I have cut it out using, from the Give It a Whirl dies, this little label from the Give It a Whirl. And when we get up to making it, we can either add it on like that, or we could cut it off to the side, or as I say, you could even pop it up there instead of the skull and crossbones. But you need, if you're going to add a sentiment, you need to do that. You need some paper to do that with as well. Okay, so as I said, there's lots and lots of kind of bits depending on how you're going to decorate it. But what you definitely need is for the mechanism is a base. I've chosen to add in a mat, and you need the piece of white for that and a piece of white for the wheel. So let us proceed, see what we can do. We'll pop those dies that we don't need out of the way, and I think we'll start by stamping on to the wheel piece. And I don't know whether you can see, when you have die cut, it's left in there's a sort of an impression left, so you can see where the pieces to stamp are going to be. However, it's much easier, I think, to stamp it like in situ. So what I'm going to use to hold these two pieces together is this little brad, which comes from the Round and Square Brads collection. And what you get in that is you get two colours, black and white, and you get the large squares and the small ones. And I've chosen the small one because ideally I want to hide it, but if I can't, I want it to be unobtrusive. But in this instance, all I'm doing is pinning it together just so that we can see clearly where to do the stamping. So I'm going to just split that pin just to hold it in place. Okay. And now I'm going to get my little flock of birds and my starry sky. I'm just going to have a little test to see that I've got them up the right way. And I'm just going to stamp my birds in. And this is where I'm going to go a little bit off what I did on the last one. So I'm going to come around to the next quadrant, and instead of on my sample, see, I've got my flock of birds, and then I've got You're a Treasure. I'm going to do something different this time. I'm going to do the ship's wheel. So we'll ink them up, and ship's wheel. And for the third segment, I'm going to go quite rogue. So what I thought would be quite nice would be to personalise it a little bit. I had a little scrap of gold glimmer paper left over from Christmas, and I know that the Playful Alphabet set has retired, but I also know that lots of people have this. So what I did was I took the 5, I cut it out of this little scrap of glimmer paper that was left over from Christmas. It's got some self-adhesive backing on it, and I'm going to peel it off and add in a number 5, just for something a little bit different. So now, when my wheel turns around, I've got a flock of birds, a ship's wheel, and a number 5, which is quite nice. Now I'm just going to disassemble that for now. I only pinned it in place just so that I could see clearly where to do all the stamping. Okay, so now I'm going to add on that, because that can happen at any time. It's purely decorative. I just thought it looked a bit nice. It looked nice with just some brighter colour in behind it. So I shall pop that in there. And the glue's going to give us just a bit of wiggle room in case it's a bit crooked. And we'll just leave that over there. Now, if we get our sample card back, we can see that in behind everything there is some stamping of ocean. So I'm going to use the Tahitian Tide and that lovely ocean stamp. I'm going to start with a Tahitian Tide bit of ocean. Ah, isn't that beautiful? And then we're going to add in a touch of Starry Sky Ocean. Ha, lovely. it becomes a matter of where is everything going to go. So I've got my ship, I've got my rigging, whoops, and I want, ideally I want my rigging to cover where the hole is going to go. And then I've got my vat, okay, and I've got my flag. Okay, I think I'm ready to work that out. So, why do we need these little paper washers? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in my pin. Whoops. Yeah, try that again. Going to pop in my pin. Going to pop in that. And before I split it, I'm going to put my washers on the back. And they are going to give me just a little bit of height so that the wheel will be easier to turn. Okay. And then just make sure you haven't done it so tight that the wheel won't spin. Now, what we're going to do next is we are going to attach that, and you have to attach it with dimensionals. And we all know that dimensionals are one of my favourite things. You need some dimensionals around the wheel because you definitely don't want sag around the wheel, or else it gets in the way of the wheel turning. So lots of dimensionals. And we'll centre it onto that Tahitian tied piece. Okay. Now, placement. So we would like that to be covering the pin, and we would like that there. Okay. So you do just have to play around with it a little bit to just get it where you want it. Then you can carefully glue. Now you have to be careful because this mast is going slightly over the aperture, so you do not want to glue it all in. So, yeah, a little bit of care with the gluing. And aiming to cover that . And then we want the ship. So we shall give him some glue. Now it's up to you whether you tuck the prow under the sail or over the top of the sail. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to dimensional the top two on so that it looks like they're billowing in the wind. Okay, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add on my bit of extra ocean. And I've cut it quite deep so that I could play around with it afterwards, and I can see that I need to cut it about here. Okay, and now that I've cut it to the right length, I can just pop in there, glue them on, or you could dimensional them if you felt that you needed to. And we can just add that in as much as you like. You could trim it. You could trim it less if you wanted to. But I want there to be plenty of room for me to pop in my happy birthday. Now, the very last thing I need to do is just add on my skull and crossbones. Okay, so now we've got our skull and crossbones. We can turn around, we can have our lovely little 5, our flock of birds, or our captain's wheel. Okay, now I'll show you what I did on the inside of my sample one. As I said, I cut myself another piece of Tahitian Tide, piece of white, and then I just added in the stamp of the sailing ship and some ocean, but obviously you could experiment and do whatever you would like. Now, the Give It a Whirl dies are still available, and the On the Ocean bundle is also still available, but if you think you'd like to add those to your stamping collection, or you've seen anything else that I've used, you're more than welcome to shop with me if you live in New Zealand, and there is a link to my online store in the video description below and at the end cards. As always, I'm more than happy to answer questions, and you can contact me through my Jan Clothier Independent Stampin' Up Demonstrator Facebook page, or my blog Thinking Stamping, or just leave a comment on this video and I'm happy to get back to you. Before I sign off completely, I'll just show you a couple of other cards that I've made with the Give It a Whirl dies. I made them a while ago, so they are used with some retired product, but I made this little baby card using All for Baby bundle, and just the little hearts and the stars come, and the clouds of course come from the Give It a Whirl bundle. And this of course was the card, this is a case of the card that was in the catalogue the first year that the Give It a Whirl dies were in it. I think the set was called something to do with Stella, Your Stella, or something like that. It's a retired set now, but again the stars and things come from the bundle. So you can see that the Give It a Whirl dies are quite a nice little, nice little way to give your cards a little twist, and to just let your stamps do a few little things more differently. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and if you haven't already subscribed to me, please do so you don't miss anything new that I do. And above all else, everyone, happy stamping.